Welcome to Afternoon Tea with Shandy, episode 3 of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Just as a quick reminder, while we're both licensed psychologists, this should not be considered mental health treatment. Please don't take our advice if you think you hear advice.
Not a mental health podcast. It's a fun podcast that sometimes we sprinkle in the knowledge that we have.
It's fun, darn it. I'm just so one viewer watched or listened to the podcast and was telling me that we were less judgmental and more serious than they expected. And I took that both as a compliment to our intention, but they sounded disappointed.
I I could appreciate that because the show, reality TV should not be taken seriously. I mean, it is. These are people's lives and they take it seriously. But for entertainment purposes, I think it's supposed to be light. It's not always light, like the themes and content, obviously, but I think people go into those shows thinking that, like, this is just, superficial nonsense I'm watching. And so having more deep conversations about the content and what people are going through might feel incongruent with the nature of reality TV. But there are, and all I watch a lot of reality television shows. There are a lot of heavy topics that come up because it
Yeah.
is supposed to be reality.
I also feel like I'm being extremely judgmental. So the fact that I wasn't judgmental enough was at least helpful for me to think like, oh, good, I'm tempering it a little.
See, I'm holding back. I'm holding back. I mean, what everyone has, you have your work self and your personal self and your professional self is can be different. And finding that balance here is a trial and error for me. So,
It's true. Yeah, and I'm not authentic in any one space at all either, so it's hard to I mean, again, I feel like I'm being plenty judgmental, but I do think that for me, there's a practice of if somebody comes into my therapy room, by default, I am not going to be judgmental, and it isn't very hard for me to put away judgment and sort of like really, empathize with the person in front of me. So to me, it feels like a good exercise in like what it means to empathize with anyone. Because if anyone shows up in my therapy room, I'm gonna do my best to empathize with them and I'm not gonna judge them.
hmm yeah, no, I agree.
But if
I agree.
Whitney shows up, might have to turn her away. I have a
Get
pre-established
out of my
judgment.
office.
Get out of here, Whitney.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, it's very different work-wise, but also, I mean, like social psych 101, we all judge, we all make judgments. There's social comparison, like upward, downward. It's pretty, it can be pretty automatic. It's not great all the time, most of the time, maybe. And so part of what we do is also checking ourselves for that too, professionally, but it definitely happens. And
Yeah.
I judge a lot of the people on reality television shows. So,
Well, speaking of social comparison, we start off pretty early with the two husbands dressed like Chippendales dancers, Brett and Jordan, and I wonder if they're comparing themselves to each other, to the actual Chippendales dancer. I'm just kidding. Brett to me is so generically good looking that he's not even good looking to me. Um,
oh, I think he's very good looking,
uh,
but I know
sure.
exactly what you say.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Jordan is fine actually, but next to Brett, it's like
I
it's
know.
like one of you is in the show and one of you is cosplaying. It's I'd be intimidated. And Brett even has like a great body. He's got a better body than I do. I'm
I know.
impressed.
You mean Jordan or
Jordan.
Brett?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously all of them. Yeah. Keeping it
Well, I was
tight.
gonna say Jordan has a great body,
He does.
and but yeah, it's just but him, with the little like bands next to Brett, I just oh, he's a
Listen,
good-looking guy. So yeah, I'm not
he
criticizing him,
is.
but like Brett has been on The Bachelorette, so we'll just. But yes, there honestly the Chippendale dance, like the cuts between, I still stand by. I loved it. The cuts between like the arguing and then like just the how ridiculous it is. And so I don't remember if I said this last time. The housewives often have themed costume like parties, like everyone comes dressed as something.
Hmm.
And when they argue in a costume, it's one of my favorite things. It's just so absurd and ridiculous. And they're really genuinely upset about something. And so with the crab claws, ouch, with her, she's like, stop it with the crab. I love stuff like that. I find it really entertaining.
So we are continuing with the epic Chase Dakota Taylor argument slash conversation.
And then Chase's girlfriend, Kate, I think she asked Miranda, does he talking about Chase, does he live for this? Like,
Uh,
which I thought was really interesting. It was just sort of chaos. Macy went up to Taylor and said, "You need to calm down." And Dakota was like, "Yeah, I agree with that." I felt in that moment, Dakota was like, "Let's bond, Macy. We've had a rocky road. Now's our time. We agree on something. Taylor needs to calm down." And Taylor just seems like, she has been cornered and she's kind of lashing out at everyone. Like I almost felt, and yeah, I don't know, but I almost felt like when she was yelling at Dakota, I was like, I don't even think she's mad at Dakota at this moment. Like I think she is, but it seems like she's just, if anyone were in front of her, it's just she was just triggered.
so let's just get to the point to me of this whole section. What do you think of Chase laying hands on Demi
Oh
and then
yeah.
her reaction? Let's just address that.
Okay. I would love to. Absolutely. Uh, so it was a tap. So for one thing, he was being antagonizing, right? Like
Hmm.
Demi was saying, go take care of your girlfriend. I think at one point she's like, be a man, like go do that. And I mean, I also was like, Chase, you need to calm down. So I agree. But
Sure, yeah, it's like you're in here arguing and your date left. Like,
yes, she's like crying
attention.
at that. Go find her. I totally agree with all of that. But so I thought his response was sort of antagonizing. Where's your husband? And then he tapped her. And I would have seen red as well in that moment. Not even from the tap, from just that, like, okay, what are you saying? Like, calm down, like that you need to just address your relationship. But when she ran to Brett, she's like, he laid hands on me. I was like, okay, that's like a little different than what I observed. And my toxic trait is when Brett was like, where is he? And he like ran after. I was like, yeah, that's
Wow.
that's my toxic trait. I own it. But like, yeah, you go fight, you run, you go get him. But yes, what do you think? What do you think about it?
Listen, I had a lot of feelings about this, and I'm willing to examine any of them that are not toxic enough for everyone or are too toxic. I would be, if I were Brett, which I am so not, right? So clearly I'm living in a different universe. But if I were Brett and my partner said, he laid hands on me, so now go kick his ass. Brett does, I think, what you're supposed to, which it, so this is where we already diverge. I would have been like, well, what did he do? Like, please explain.
What happened?
But he goes, right? He's like, okay, my wife just said somebody laid hands on her. And so now I'm going to go kick his ass because that's what she asked me to do. So he does that. If I were Brett and I later found out that I came in like that and then later saw what happened, I would be like, you just misused
Yes.
me in this situation. You abused the trust that we have about how I'm supposed to show up. That's how I felt. I was super annoyed. But yes, this wasn't a question of like a stronger person hurt a weaker person. And so now this weaker person is going to leverage the strength of another person who cares about them to like compensate for that. That was not that. That was like, go beat him up for me. That's what that felt like to me. That
Yeah.
was, I'm just going to use my husband as a tool for power right now that isn't necessary. and isn't isn't appropriate, isn't an appropriate response for what you did.
Chase, where on her body did he touch? Like
I
he touched
think if he touched
like
her, and I'm
hip.
guessing he did, I think he poked her in the belly or touched her hip. Like I feel like he made physical contact.
So I think so, and I feel like everyone agrees with that. Like the on the show, they all say,
If
I
he had
think
wagged his finger in her face, would it have been the same? Because if you're like, if you wag your finger in your face, I'm going to make my husband beat you up. And if that's the thing, great. Beat him up. He's a dick. Fine. He laid hands on me. That is a lie in my mind. That's a lie.
I mean, well, and if so I'm jumping ahead a little bit. During this episode, I was like, am I now a Zach fan? Like, is this am I a Zach supporter, a Zach sympathizer? I do not know. I am questioning everything. But so with Zach, when he was like, well, and we'll get to that later, but if we're gonna be petty, if we're gonna be petty, someone Demi could say technically, yeah, he laid his hand on my body. But when people hear that, you hear you hurt, like you hit it rather than like a tap or like a pat.
Right.
But
He
I,
assaulted me. I
yeah,
I think a jury might not think so.
yeah. I think if she ran upstairs and said, Chase, pat my hip, it doesn't land as well. It doesn't strength. But I think if she ran upstairs and said, hey, you need to go talk to Chase. He's being really disrespectful to me and inappropriate with the other party guests. And he was made some antagonizing comment while he like touched me. Like I think that is I feel like that's a little bit more accurate to describe why she was upset.
I mean, I guess maybe I'm feeling like if somebody did that to me, I don't have anybody to ask to beat them up for me. I would just have to handle it on my own. And since she was in as much danger as I would be in that situation, I think it felt weak. But
Yeah.
also, it to me it felt, and again, this is a very light comparison, but I feel that men who push back against things like the Me Too movement, men who don't believe victims, men who distrust women and think they're going to lie about assault, when that's already a narrative that I think like victims, survivors, and people have to push against, and then I see this, I'm like, that's what that felt like. That felt
Mm.
like you claiming that you were a victim of something that was televised, everyone can see that you're not. I feel like it hurts women. I mean, I made that's a big statement. It hurts women
Yeah.
to me, but I that's what I'm seeing is I'm just like, is that what we're doing? Is that the way we're like describing this situation?
Yeah, I think my issue would be like I understand if you see red, you're angry, you might feel dysregulated, you might say things that, when you take a step back and you look at it with when you are regulated, you might describe it differently. And it doesn't feel like anyone's doing that. I didn't feel like there is so much gray. I didn't think it was false. It wasn't true. It was somewhere not even in between. It just technically, like I said, technically he touched her, but he laid hands. That phrase just sounds like you got hit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of interesting dynamics that are related to masculinity in the follow-up to this as well. I'm not a fan of Chase, and so sort of to watch him be rude and cocky and then immediately sort of be like, "Oh no, it's okay, bro. Like, what's up? No, I didn't do you like what are you talking?" Like sort of turn on the I gotta be nice because now I'm threatened sort of thing is funny and satisfying only because it's Chase.
Yeah. I just don't like to when he's like, I just asked like where you were. That's not what you were doing. You were being antagonizing. You weren't like, hey, like, were you looking for him? Did you want to say something to Brett? No, no, you weren't clearly. Like it was just, where's your husband? Meaning go find him. And so it just felt like, I don't know, no one was really owning what really
No,
happened.
it's true because the honest thing would have been like, I barely poked her and that's no big deal. And then they all could have been like, don't poke her.
I do think people shouldn't touch. I just think you shouldn't touch people that you're not friends with. Like, I mean, I think that like it doesn't. like everyone has their own level of comfort with touch anyway, but I just think if you are trying to be um like cause someone to get upset in some way, or you want to be irritating, or just don't touch them too. Like just don't
It's true.
touch. So that's how I feel. So that's why I think I didn't quite have the reaction that you had, but similarly, like I also felt like that's not exactly true. She's not describing it correctly. But I do think don't touch me, don't touch anyone else unless they want to. And that's not even, I'm not even talking about like assault or any like sexual,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
just people like flicking each other and doing things. Not a fan.
don't like pat my arm. Don't, unless I'm friends with you and we've established that's okay.
Yeah, I don't even want your hand on my shoulder, probably.
Yes.
In consolation.
I did think it was really funny, and I had to rewind this. I think I did it a couple times to rewatch where Jordan just came out of nowhere and was screaming. I don't remember, what did he say? Did I write it
Oh, I
down?
remember because I have quoted this at home so many times. After Chase, go apologize to her. Okay, I'll go apologize. He goes, he passes, they're behind him. He walks up. I think he says what you were reacting to, which is like, I was just looking for it, he's trying to downplay it. And so Jordan shouts from behind and below, take ownership. It's like,
It was so loud and aggressive. And I was like, who is that? So when I first saw it, I was like, who's yelling? Who's saying that? It
like in the back jumping, take ownership.
Jordan. Oh, okay. Who honestly seems like a really laid back guy. So it kind of just took me by surprise, but also it was so loud and just
I'm sorry, this was Jordan's glow up. Already, the men have been called to action. They show up and Brett handles it because he was the one called. And I just see Jordan just being like, here we go. It's my time. I agree with what they're saying. Take ownership. He just was. He really
I
shined.
I love that. Yes, I agree. Then afterwards, so the police came. I thought it was really funny when Jesse asked them, have you seen
Do you
Secret
know
Life?
the show? No.
And both of the police officers, no.
Do you know how that would make this so much easier? Yeah, I bet it would. It would be great if you knew we were famous. I feel like that would help this situation a lot.
You'd understand the dynamics. I could explain. I could give names. You'd get it. Oh, the Chippendale dance. Can we talk about this? The dance?
Yeah, I wrote that Macy has a scared response that is funny.
Oh, she did. She was like, everyone hide, which I totally would have done the same thing. So, but yes, I would have had the same response as Macy. Like, cops are here, hide, even if you're not doing anything wrong.
I would say that's telling of a person's disposition or how likely they are to feel in trouble, but maybe that's just a type of person that just feels really common. I'm nervous. Let's hide.
Called a neurotic person. Yes.
Yeah.
Anxious,
Yeah.
neurotic.
But Macy's response to like, when I'm afraid, this is how I act, I thought was really funny. But the Chippendale, so after it's all calmed down, they reset the intention of the night, they say, and then they go ahead with the Chippendales portion of the entertainment.
What do you think about, what are your thoughts on the Chippendales dance?
I mean, the dance itself, or like, what are we talking about? The whole,
Well, I
the whole
mean,
programming.
we're not rating their dance moves necessarily. We can. I'd like to, that, but more of just the concept of doing a Chippendales dance, like with Jen being on the stage, so to speak, and Zach watching, and the whole message.
This will get hashed out in parts throughout the episode, I guess, when we hear like Zach's reaction to it. But in general, there's part of me that thinks it's funny and fun. Like you've had this show, the Chippendales portion was a big part of the whole climax of the season. And as a result, all this stuff came from it. I don't know what all came from it, but like Zach moved out, he quit medical school, they're working on their marriage. Jen said, I'm going to be in mom talk. Even if I went to Chippendales in that first episode, should have been fine. So in that context of everybody was in on that, I could see this being funny. I could see this being a good thing if it were Zach's idea, actually, is like this is a great way actually to sort of like do a redo, right? We're going to bring Chippendales back. I'm going to behave better. It's going to be fun. There's a lot of ways where I think it could have been fine. And so the idea of doing it, I could imagine felt less intrusive, more innocent than maybe they thought that it was. But I'm not sure that I buy that. I think Jessie is a pot stirrer. I think that she was the one who had to pull out a flask in a hot tub at somebody's like church event at the house. I think she's the one who sprang Chippendales on them in the first place. And then in this one, as we'll see, they ran it past Jen, and Jen was like, "That's really funny," but they didn't run past, and then they're gonna like jump grind up on you, and we're gonna sit and like watch Zach and see what happens. Apparently she didn't know that was gonna happen, and later they're sort of like she should have known. She kind of knew it was in the air, but Jesse was like, but it was supposed to be a surprise. They're trying to do a thing at the expense of Jen and Zach.
Oh yeah. Well, and was it did Jesse dress as J-Lo and Ben Affleck? Who was the other
Yep.
couple?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was Jesse.
Yeah, so to me, all of that, yeah, feels like this was intentional. It was not very kind, I thought.
And this is after the rupture they already had, where they sat down with Zach and he said this, and things weren't cool. And they're like, okay, so things aren't cool. They're not cool with us. They're not cool between the two of you. Things are tenuous. We're going to go ahead with this. It's in bad taste.
I think if they did bring Zach in and say, listen, you had a hard season one. A lot of people don't like you. We thought maybe we could let's make this sort of like a second chance for you to laugh it off and make light and respond in a different way than you did. And I think if they brought him in, it could have felt empowering. It could have been uh, helpful, but not including him in it, that's the problem, I think. So it almost feels like we're testing you. We're
Yeah.
testing you.
Testing and hoping he'll fail, I think. Or
But
rubbing it in his face that they won in some way.
I do think, though, that I understand that Jen did not know that they were going to bring her, and dance on her. But if you have those people saying, "Hey, we want to do this Chippendale show," I think she should have told Zach that. That I feel like that's problematic. Like
Hmm.
she didn't say anything like, "Hey, this issue that really seems to be breaking our marriage, or at least it was you know, a major rupture for us that
Hmm.
the world can see now." They want to do something like that to comment on it and let's talk about it to prepare. And the fact she didn't say anything, I thought was very odd to me.
It's true. Maybe she wanted him tested also. And then there was a little retroactive regret or something.
Maybe I'm not a huge Jen fan.
Oh, I can tell you're turning on her quick too.
I mean, I don't think I was a huge Jen. I didn't feel like this last season, but I don't think I really had many opinions last season, other than I felt bad for her with Zach. I'm not saying I did say earlier that like am I a Zach sympathizer, but I do feel like it seems like he's trying, whether that is just optics or not. But regardless, Jen strikes me as someone who has a hard time with confrontation. She's anxious and a bit of a people pleaser and will say what makes the person in front of her happy and then has a hard time with the consequences after. And it's messy. And
Yeah.
that is how I feel.
Yeah, I can see that. I think I'm like pretty compassionate around like what it might mean to lie to somebody like Zach or to try to be a people pleaser when you're balancing your deeply held religious beliefs with a friendship with somebody like Jesse, who's like, I'm gonna push all your buttons and push all your boundaries and all of that. Like I could like I notice myself around people who are too interrogatey, and I start to feel like I have to defend my answers or give them the answers that they want.
Oh no, I agree completely. And honestly, I have been Jen before where you just feel uncomfortable, you want to make the person around you happy. And I think Brett kind of describes it later. Like she's not lying, but it how that worry about the response that you might get can impact your delivery or what you share. And so I feel like I totally get that. And yeah, I have most certainly been there. And same with what you're describing with the interrogating like piece. I just think like back off. And Jesse, that doesn't seem like a good move to make as a friend. But I still think Jen has a hard time telling people exactly how she feels.
Yeah, she definitely should work on that. Like, what happens when I feel that way that makes me make stuff up? If that's what's happening, I'm still not sure if he gambled away his medical tuition or not, or whatever. Well, so the party finally winds down. Zach isn't happy, but he's sort of like, I'll be a good sport. It makes me wonder if they did talk about it. Like something's going to happen, it's going to make you uncomfortable, and then he talked about it. But they kind of leave, and they're not totally happy about it, and they'll address it later throughout the episode. But it'll be interesting to see how they go forward. And then we move into Halloween night. So Halloween night, Michaela is chilling with her sisters, and she kind of brings up that she felt like she was a little mean when they met at Miranda's house. And I think it was the same scene when I was like, oh, Michaela's being a little mean girl. So I thought that was interesting that she was like, I feel like I maybe was a little mean. And then she says, in the house we grew up, there was a lot of anger, and so maybe that's coming from that. And so she kind of alludes to like a difficult growing up environment, which she'll go to therapy later. We'll talk more about that later in this episode.
But I think she shared at least maybe in an interview. I don't remember if with her siblings, but in an interview, it was this scene that she says she was sexually abused for 4 to 5 years until
Yeah,
the age of 15.
yeah,
And so we will touch on that in the therapy portion.
yeah. So Zach and Jen do go on to talk about how they felt about the party. This scene was actually very interesting
Yeah, I want to hear.
because, well, so Jen does a thing which I think is good, and she kind of calls Zach out, which is like, okay, the party was what it was, and you got really frustrated, and then you were mad with me, or the way you were acting with me, or the way you were talking to me was directing your angry energy at me.
Wait, did you think he was mad at her? Did she
Well,
say that?
she's saying the way you then sort of like reacted to me and treated me in the aftermath of that was not great. But she's also saying he didn't like check in with her. So she was there too. She had Chippendales dancers grinding on her. She was embarrassed. But instead of him being like, hey, are you okay? Was that all right? Did that bother you? How did that affect you? He just was straight into like, I'm annoyed. That was mad. They're trolling us. I'm pissed off. I'm mad. So I don't think he was saying I'm mad at you, but I think she was like, you never stopped to check in on me. You never stopped to be like, we're in this together. And your angry energy was coming at me instead.
Hmm.
And him just being like, these are bad friends. This is our marriage. These are bad friends. These aren't real friends. Get away from these friends. Separate from these friends.
But he's also not wrong. They are bad friends. Like that's not a very nice thing to do to someone that you say, if one of my friends did that to me, I would not love it. I would not feel comfortable with that person. I think that that's not the kindest thing to do.
It's true. I want to know who he's talking about because does she defend Demi and Jesse a lot, or does she defend Mom Talk? And when he says these are bad friends, is he thinking everybody in Mom Talk is a bad friend, or there's one and two personalities that we need to navigate better? And this isn't in defense of it. I don't like anyone in this situation. Like everyone's bad and wrong, so I'm not really trying to like
Yeah.
conclude because I think Jesse and Demi are a little bit lame and classless for springing this on them in a way. But I do think like it made for good TV. And so I wonder how much of their calculation is this is for the business. We're doing things for the business. Why aren't you on board with the business? Can't you see this is good TV? I don't think that's a good excuse, but when we're saying are they a good friend or a bad friend, I wonder how much they're filtering through like better to ask forgiveness than permission because this is good TV, which is still not good friends, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
No, I agree. But they've done it before. You know that truth box that they keep doing that causes a lot of problems.
Hmm.
Like there are some responses that are for TV that I don't think they would be doing normally. But also on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, I think the last season, yeah, it was the last season, Heather, who's like Mormon royalty, She said they were in, I think they were in Cabo. She said, I think what we should do is bring out our phones and find a text message, a mean text message that you sent to someone about someone here, and then let them read it. And I was like, that is not what you do in your normal life. And it was very problematic and I made for good TV. And so I do think that that happens a lot where these individuals think I'm making a lot of money doing this. I want to stay on. What will keep me on?
Yeah. Jen said she had no idea. This is a lie, I wrote.
It's a that is a lie. She did know. And she's then putting him in an uncomfortable position when the guys were like, she knew and she was okay with it. But they didn't actually say, well, she didn't know all of it.
Yeah.
And but still, yeah, that's
But
true.
it is, it feels like that plausible deniability of a politician. It's like, okay, well, what did you know and what could you have figured out from this, Jen? Like, are we skating by on technicalities with all of these claims?
And she says something, she says it feels like Chippendales all over again. And what do you think about his reaction? Do you remember? Because he was flabbergasted.
Is it when he's like, I can't talk right now?
He was like, I what? No, no. I think he was not laughing, but you know when that like incredulous laugh that one would do, and just saying no, and then finally said, "Yeah, I can't do this. I need to take a break and cut the cameras."
Yeah.
And because I think in his mind, he's like, I've been working really hard for that not to happen again, to not have another Chippendales. And whether it's because he really wants to connect with Jen, have a better marriage, whether it's because of the cameras and that social desirability, uh, I think that he is trying for whatever reason. And he's like, this is not Chippendales again. But she's having a reaction, like, from probably repetitive experiences with him.
She said earlier in the party when he was like, I'll be a good sport. And she's like, yeah, we don't want to go through that Chippendales thing again. I mean, I think she's probably already drawing comparisons to this is a situation that you could overreact to. But to me, the way that I saw this was she is getting way better at trying to be really accountable and direct, which we're saying she's not good at already. So the fact that she's trying to do that, I think, is good. And she's calling him on, you didn't show up for me. To me, him kind of losing it and being like, we're not doing that, to me made it seem like everything he's doing for the cameras, his apology tour, all of the chat GPT coaching that we've like joked about, that just confirmed it. Because I'm like, oh, he'll get on camera and do all the right stuff. But as soon as he's frustrated, he can't do it anymore, which made it feel like totally disingenuous. And so he's just like, no, turn that camera off. I can understand not wanting to do that when you're like super dysregulated, but
Yeah.
it made him, to me, it made him feel very fake.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell. I didn't know. I thought about that, and I couldn't decide if I thought it was fake or if it was healthy to say I need a timeout. I need to like anyone in conflict, I need to walk away and cool off before we keep talking about this. I think my decision will, I think I need to see whether he comes back to that conversation to make that decision.
Sure. I guess I'm just thinking of like if a policeman is like, let's turn off the body cam for this part, then I'm just like, nope, sorry. That needs to stay on all the time if we want to see how you're really going to be in here. But you are right that taking space when you know you can't have a productive conversation. Now, I did not hear him say that's a really valid question and we should address that, but that's just making me too, that's just impacting me too much right now. So I'm not ready to have that conversation. That's not what I heard him say. I heard him be like, "Oh, you're going to make it about that? Then I'm out because you're full of nonsense and I'm not even going to entertain that, you dumb silly." That's what I heard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if he had said, I'm getting really upset. I just need to cool off for a moment and we can pick this back up. I want to talk to you about it." Like that would feel better.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Because I think the process of what Jen is trying to say to him is you react in this way, and instead of showing up for me, you attack me. And so she's like, so you're wrong again. And he's just like, I want to talk about how your friends are so bad and you need to leave mom talk. And you're somehow saying I did something wrong again. Puh.
Yeah.
Zach's fragile. He's new at this.
Yeah. Yeah. The next scene, Whitney and Connor have their baby.
Yeah, it's nice. They have a baby. The
And then,
water breaks. They're
mhm,
there. She talks about how great it is to have Connor there, but also reminds us of his cheating or whatever in that moment. Like watching her give birth and he's there doing all the stuff, and she's just like, so glad we worked through all that other bad stuff.
yeah, their baby's cute.
It was cute. I mean, I've been present for a birth. It reminded me of my role of holding the legs and doing all the parts
Mhm.
that I was involved in, but what an ordeal.
Anyway, next scene.
Pony rides.
And I wrote like the girls get together with kids at a fair slash corn maze. I was wondering, what is this? What is this? Is it a fair? Is it?
It must be like a corn maze plus, right? Like when they have those and they bob for
Yeah,
apples and
I've been to those before, and I've seen they've had, bounce houses and other things present, but never a Ferris wheel. The Ferris wheel threw me off.
hmm, yeah.
Anyway, they're all there. Okay, I don't think we mentioned this. So Jen is in a tough situation with her friends, quote unquote, because if you complain about your partner or if your partner hurts your feelings or upsets you, but you are trying to work on it and your friends have a really strong opinion, then it can feel uncomfortable sharing things.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I think she's sort of in that place.
Right.
But
How are things going? And it's like they're going.
right. Or even if she says, great, he's trying, they kind of roll their eyes and don't believe it.
Hmm.
Or she says, he hurt my feelings. Like we got into a really bad argument and he was not super kind. Well, you just need to leave. Well, she's not wanting to do that right now exactly. Like she's trying to figure it out. And so I don't always think that um unless in certain situations, yes, that comment is warranted. But anyway, she brings up Vanderpump Villa situation.
Yeah, and I think at that point they are sort of commenting on Jen when she feels cornered. She throws things out there, which is probably true, that it felt like very bizarre and out of the blue to be throwing that in Demi's face at that moment, but that was sort of how she was reacting to the criticisms of her relationship. Most of this scene, I think, then transforms into showing us as the audience that Taylor and Miranda had a very close friendship and connection, and as they get talking, they're falling back into it. So in some ways, it's nice to see, even though Miranda's just crashing the party in season two. It's nice to see Taylor reconnecting with her friend. I think that can be really healing.
Yes, I thought the scene was really great. Well, the producers and whoever cut the scene and created the back and forth between the interviews where Taylor was like, should I just list what we've done? We did this, we did this, we did this, and you can see Miranda kind of like just going like this with her hair. And then they just cut solely to Miranda and she goes, I mean, she's not wrong. And I just thought that was great, the whole sequence.
Yeah, they don't talk more about what went where, who did what in this scene necessarily,
I
right?
think they do. I wrote it down. Yeah, Miranda said, I only kissed. The extent of what I did with other partners was kissing. And Taylor said, yes and no. Yes. We had sex in the shower with our husbands next to each other. She doesn't list that in the conversation that they're having. That was just the interview. But in their conversation, Miranda also says, yeah, you're right. And kind of takes ownership.
She does. I think we covered this really like at length in the last episode, but to me it's funny and I can see the frustration on both where Miranda is saying technically we just kissed. That is
Mhm.
all that happened. And Taylor's shaking her head and she's like, they did a lot more than that. And then when they go to name it, they just kissed. She didn't give oral sex to the husbands. They didn't swap partners. They didn't have sex with partners. I'm not even sure they touched partners' genitals, although maybe like they did kiss. And so I understand that Miranda is sort of trying to make it sound very innocent, like we just kissed. And Taylor's like, oh no. And then when she starts to name out all the things, they just kissed. They kissed in like an orgy situation. Many people were kissing and were present. So like, yeah, that feels like wild. And so this is Miranda sort of trying to downplay it, and then Taylor saying things that make it sound like we were in full-on threesomes and she's denying it. And then when it gets down to it, it's like, oh no, we're just right. Like you were
Yeah.
kissing together.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. Because I thought when I hear swingers, I think like you've done more than kissing with other couples or
Right.
other.
A swinging scandal. Gosh, I would just at least hope that there was some like extramarital P&V to even call it a swinging party. But then they
Um,
talk about Love Island and playing the games, which I didn't understand, but apparently they're reality TV show fans also, and so they were basing their reality swinging off of Love Island games. Is that accurate?
yes, they were. I also have not watched Love Island, but they clearly both have.
I guess leading up to Michaela's therapy appointment, which comes next, in the earlier conversation with her sisters, she was talking about how like there was a lot of anger in the family. She's tired of taking people's shit, she says. And her sister says, especially you. And that's when she kind of disclosed that she was sexually abused from a young age. So it sounds like her sisters know that, kind of know that it has to do with the anger. And now later in the episode, we go to therapy, Michaela's therapy, where she's going to process some of that.
Yeah, Michaela in the earlier scene on Halloween talks about how she goes into a little bit more detail, and she has talked about her skin condition, and she doesn't she doesn't have a diagnosed autoimmune disease or a it doesn't sound like she has a diagnosis exactly. But there's research to support that kiddos that have experienced childhood sexual abuse have a much higher likelihood of developing an autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, a thyroid disorder. And obviously, correlation does not mean causation, but there is a higher risk of developing. And she says something similar to, in my family, we weren't allowed to really have open conversations and talk about our feelings until it reached a certain level, a boiling point, and then it would come out. And she says, I just feel like I'm just shoving so much down, and this is how it's manifesting in my body. And there are different theories as to why that could be a reason, a contributing factor, such as just the chronic stress on one's body and like ongoing cortisol that's released from that as a kiddo or even as an adult, and how that can impact. Yeah, so
Yeah. So she goes to see a sexual trauma specialist, Natasha Helfer, who I know, by the way.
how do you know? You know her therapist
Uh-huh.
personally?
She wouldn't know me by name. She used to be the president of the Mormon Mental Health Association. Maybe she still is, but you know, those are often annual appointments. And I think she formed the Mormon Mental Health Association. I've heard her give trainings on sexual trauma and sexual treatment. So, just as far as sex therapy goes, she's also like a prominent person out there. So we've crossed paths. I've sat in a number of trainings with her and meetings and stuff like that.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
What do you think of her therapy?
I thought it was fine. It's always interesting to watch other people do therapy to see what's similar and what's personality and different things. But I thought that her therapy was good. Michaela brings up that she wants to touch on trauma. I do think in trauma treatment, it's really important to like follow the pace of the person, of the client who they're coming in with. And so a lot of times trauma treatment looks like establishing a lot of trust and rapport between the client and the therapist, making somebody feel really secure and safe, kind of like looking at how processing trauma might impact their lives. I've kind of heard this metaphor of like a frog with its bags packed jumping across the lily pads, and the bags that are packed are the past trauma. And so as you're hopping across the lily pads, it might not be a good time to open up your suitcases and start looking through things, but you just want to stay on the surface, stay above, but then when you kind of get to a bank where you can really like settle, that might be a good time to unpack the bags.
Oh, I've heard
So
that.
I think it's important to think about like what it means to think about trauma. Time is important also. But it really is heartbreaking because Michaela basically discloses that, like at the age of 14 in this case that she's talking about, she's having like sexual contact with somebody that she doesn't want to be having, who may be a trusted adult. She doesn't go into it, maybe another person, but maybe a partner, but it's something that's like really impacted her.
Yeah, yeah. And I think not in this scene, in a prior scene, did she say she told her mom and her mom didn't believe her or
Yeah, and it made it worse.
yeah. And then that's right. And she said she just felt like she couldn't use her voice again after that. And that just sounds absolutely devastating. Absolutely. To come to a primary attachment figure and share this horrific trauma that they're experiencing and to have that person brush it off or deny it or
Yeah,
uh,
there's the term for it is a secondary traumatization.
Mm,
And I mean, I can't overstate how detrimental it can be. And I get it must be difficult both to have a reaction and to know how to react and to know how to support somebody who comes and discloses something like that. Like I understand that parents might not be equipped for it, but it's really heartbreaking because when the reaction is not supportive or it's accusatory or they're not believed or they defend the abuser or they downplay it. All of these things are pretty common, unfortunately, reactions that parents might have to somebody disclosing this. That secondary re-traumatization happens, which is the sense of safety being even less. When you tell a trusted person and they don't believe you, you re-experience the fact of like, I am not safe. I'm not protected. The people who need to show up and protect me are not going to do it. And now I'm even in more danger because now they have this, now they're involved in it, but it's not in a supportive way. It's really devastating. So hearing Michaela say this sadly isn't surprising, but it's really upsetting because it would have made everything so much worse.
mhm. Yeah,
And then
yeah.
the theme that Natasha talks about here about feeling control, taking back power, I think these are often themes in that because often people who experience sexual abuse feel a lack of power, a lack of ability to tell their own story, make their own choices. And so they feel powerless. And
Mm,
so part of the trauma to find a way to reclaim power, to feel secure and safe in that is part of it. I will say so. She chose not. There's a technique called the empty chair technique, which is not exactly what Natasha did here. Very close. The empty chair technique is like there's an empty chair and you imagine the person you want to talk to is in that chair and you talk to the chair. Natasha embodies the empty chair. Talk to me and do that. I think that this has been shown to be a very effective therapy intervention, and I would almost never ever do it because of how awkward it makes people feel to like go through that. If I came to a therapist's office and they're like, talk to this chair how you want to, I would want to leave. I would not want to do it.
I'm
But I'm
ask, can you leave the room? I'll do it if you
yeah,
leave the
I'll
room.
talk to the chair if I'm
Leave the
alone.
chair. Leave us alone. Let me speak my piece. Yeah, I would not. I would also feel, I mean, I feel like people are uncomfortable even writing a letter to that person and reading it to their therapist versus, I mean, that seems like a step down in terms of the discomfort that could arise with the two chair or empty chair. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hate it, but my hesitation to do it is not because it's not effective. It's because it's just so uncomfortable, and I'm not positive it will be effective. I went through a group therapy. It wasn't really therapy. This was scandalous, actually. A large group awareness training, which is like pseudo therapy that probably shouldn't have been done. Non-therapists doing a thing. But all of that being said, they had like 300 people in a room, spaced us all out. Grab a chair. You're gonna talk to this chair and beat this chair up, and it's your mom and like whatever. It was like solving parental stuff like that. And I couldn't get into it. I'm in a room with people, so I'm just like, oh, like I was upset. Some people were like going nuts on the chair. Like I saw people really like get into it. So I, people are going to respond differently. But here's something I will say. So in group therapy, a very similar thing that might happen, or in couples therapy, is let's say in couples therapy, you might say to the therapist, like, he never listens to me and it really pisses me off. And the therapist might say, like, say that to him. And then you have to turn to your partner and say, like, you never listen to me, you really piss me off. That sounds like just such a technical sort of exercise, but it's actually pretty powerful. Like
Oh,
you're
yeah.
saying it to the person. And so there is power in like going through the motions of this communication. So that's where, as much as I'm like, oh, I hate the empty chair, it could be impactful because you are saying what needs to be said.
When yeah, I have found that some people will speak in a way that is like detaching them from their own experience rather. So if you even ask about pain, like physical pain level, and how that might impact someone, I will hear people say, well, when you are in pain, you can't do what you want to do versus when I'm in pain. And I just find that distancing language is really interesting. But
Yeah. So I see Michaela trying to be a good sport, probably acting how I would, which is like instead of doing a therapeutic thing, I'm feeling self-conscious, but she does it anyway. I feel uncomfortable. And I think Natasha does a good job of holding her to it, making sure she goes through that, saying she has the right to say that. She has the right to say you had no right to do that.
Mhm.
You mother effer, I think,
Yeah.
like tapping into like anger is valid. In this case, it's defensive of you and your right as a child, those sorts of things. You had no business doing that. So I thought that all the notes were there. I thought Natasha did a good job. What did you think of her?
I thought she did a great job too. And as I've said before, I don't specialize in trauma. I don't do trauma therapy. I thought she did a great job. I really liked her response when Michaela said, "This is uncomfortable." And she said, "It would be really uncomfortable to live with this for so long." I was like, "That's a great therapist line. That's really good." Yeah. And then that transitioned to, yeah, Michaela making those statements.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought she did great.
Now, because this is one of the few moments where therapy is shown so far in the series, outside of ketamine, um, I love being able to like see this and comment on it. I love that Michaela's in a comfortable couch with a blanket up on her. Like providing comfort in that space feels really important.
Mhm.
I like that Natasha checks in at the end to say like, how was that? Is that a little bit lighter? I think sometimes in the moment you're like, no, not yet. She's like, maybe a little. I think it's not like the old trope of like we made a big breakthrough today. I feel like those aren't always evident in the moment. Sometimes somebody will really have an experience in therapy, but often it's more of like a slow untangling after
Mhm.
the fact.
I often tell people that I think some individuals who have never been to therapy, no therapy experience, think that you go to therapy and after a session, it's like a massage. You leave feeling relaxed and at ease and lighter, and it actually can increase some of these feelings while you're doing the active treatment portion. And it's because a lot of these things, like, people are just trying to cope and live their lives and not think about the distressing events. And so to have to go there can be distressing and bring up a lot. And so sometimes people leave feeling pretty exhausted or, yeah, depleted. And so that's a big part of therapy that I don't know that everyone realizes, the people who have not done therapy before.
Yeah. Yeah, some people really go in ruffled and feel all straightened out afterwards, and other people go in all straightened out and they get all ruffled afterward. And I wouldn't be surprised if Michaela went home after this and cried and slept and who knows, like it can take a lot out of you just to give focused attention to difficult memories can take a lot out of you regardless.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I think it was very brave of her to, well, it's very brave of her to talk about this on a national TV show and to let us as the viewers see a portion of her therapy appointment. That would be as someone who she says seems to struggle with vulnerability, that
Hmm.
would be incredibly vulnerable and not easy. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. You want to talk about the Taylor and Macy, the
And
visit?
Whitney, they're going to see the baby.
The baby. You got to see the baby,
They saw the baby.
who's very cute. As we mentioned, I don't know that I have much to say about this scene. Do you?
Whitney does make the announcement, I think I want to come back. She's she's ready.
Really?
Yeah, she's ready to come back to mom talk.
We had no idea. No idea.
I know. I know. Cut to good luck without me from last season.
Yes.
But the final scene of the episode is Jen
Zach.
is late and wants to take a pregnancy test. And this is no shade towards Zach. It was just a funny moment when she's like, "I'm going to take a pregnancy test," and he's sitting in the living room, maybe with the kids or something. He's like, "Do you want me to just like wait here?" Ah! Ah! And she's
Yeah.
like, "It'd be great if you came into the bathroom with me." Okay, that's neither here nor there. But I just thought it was funny. It's like, yeah, let me know if you're pregnant. Come and tell me.
I thought that was funny too. Yeah. But she is.
She takes the test and she's pregnant. And it is scary news at this time in their marriage.
I don't remember which pregnancy test brand kind of changed. This was a while ago. Like, I feel like this was maybe, I mean, I remember it maybe 10 years ago. Ch Started to change up the way they would advertise. And so they would show some women being very excited, some crying, some saying like
Hmm.
now, please, now, now is not the time. They still have commercials like that. Maybe it's Clear Blue. I don't remember. But I think that the shift versus this idea of anytime you find out you're pregnant is a happy, joyous occasion. For some people, that's not the case, or it can be complex feelings can arise.
Yeah.
And she's clearly very stressed about it.
Yeah. It's sad. Like you would obviously hope to be excited no matter what, but pregnancies are not always planned. And even if you're in a happy relationship with plenty of money, it's still like a big thing. It's big, it's stressful. So it's hard. I can only imagine that women feel a lot of pressure to react and respond and feel a certain way about things like pregnancy. And it's complicated. You're not gonna always feel one thing, I'm imagining.
Yeah. But I think we will learn more about how she is processing this next episode and beyond.
Absolutely. So that is the end of episode 3. Thanks for taking some time for some afternoon tea with Shandy.
Yep. Always a nice time.
Such a nice time. Please tune in for episode 4 of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Let's see what these ladies are up to.
All right. Can't wait.
Our neighborhood lately, the missionaries have been like, they call it tracting. I don't know if they still call it tracting. We used to call it tracting when you go knock doors in the neighborhoods or whatever. I was walking yesterday. Macho is getting old. My dog is getting old. And so I'll walk him and he'll just like plop down in the grass halfway through the walk. And it's not a very long walk, but when he's done, he's done. So I will carry him home. And so I'm yesterday walking home and it's like 99 degrees outside. I'm walking my dog home. To me, that's enough of like, don't talk to me energy. But the missionaries did a drive-by, which to me is uncommon. Usually they're out walking or they knock on your door, but they're in a car. Good for them. It was 99 degrees, but they drove from behind. And so they shout, "Hey, do you want to come worship with us on Sunday?" Or they say something. They do use the words worship, like come worship with us. And there's a lot of ways I could have gone. I could have gone with like, I'm already involved, like no new information. Like I didn't, but I'm walking, it's 90 degrees. They're like calling from the street. And so I'm just like, no, thank you, which seemed like the shortest way to get to the same answer, which is like, no, thank you. And then he shouts as they continue to drive, nice dog, or something. I didn't even look. I didn't even know thank yous. I was just like, oh my gosh. And so I feel bad. Put me in this position of feeling kind of rude, really having a lot of empathy for what it's like to be a missionary and you're just trying to just trying to talk to people. invite them to church.
How do people feel the missionaries about going door to door? Because to me, I know if anyone knocks on my door, I'm like, my child, hide. Do not go to the door. We're not answering. I don't want to talk to anyone. It's anything important, they'll leave a note. And I imagine a lot of people are like that. I don't think it's just me. And then I would be so anxious going door to door. Are people nervous about it? Do they feel like
I
I
have
think dread it? I just would absolutely dread it. That would be the worst part of my faith, job, etc. Like,
I think they probably do. I didn't like it when I was in Brazil and there was no internet and it was normal to go and talk to people door to door. That even then, just the cold calling of, are you interested in my religion is very dissatisfying usually. Like the answers you get are normally not satisfying. And in Brazil, they're more satisfying because people are like, oh, you want to talk about Jesus? Sure, like come in, let's do it, So I cannot imagine what it would be like in this day and age to be asked to go knock on doors. I do think they've been strategically trying many things, like missionaries are on social media doing things. Like there's a lot of other efforts because going door
yeah.
to door probably is just the least successful possible thing. But there's
Mhm.
also, I don't know, when I was on my mission, and I imagine it must be true, every once in a while somebody gets really inspired and gives a good pep talk, and they're just like, get out there and you're going to find the people the Lord has prepared and it's ready. And so sometimes you might get missionaries who are just like really excited about it. I'm guessing it's similar to the general population. You have a very small percentage of a population who's going to be okay with and even good at sales, and everyone else is going to hate it. And so I think the majority of people don't like it, and there's probably a few go-getters out there who just, are excited to talk to people.
Yes. Yeah. I think that makes sense.